Fear of failure is one of the most paralyzing emotions we experience as human beings. It keeps us trapped in our comfort zones, prevents us from pursuing our dreams, and robs us of the extraordinary life we're capable of living. This fear whispers insidious lies. You're not good enough. What if people laugh at you? It's safer to stay where you are. But what if I told you that this fear, which seems so insurmountable, can be completely dismantled? What if the very thing holding you back could become the catalyst for your greatest achievements? The truth is that fear of failure isn't something you're born with, it's learned. And anything that's learned can be unlearned. The principles I'm about to share with you aren't just theoretical concepts, they're battle-tested strategies that have helped countless individuals break through their limitations and achieve what once seemed impossible. These principles will fundamentally reshape how you view failure, risk, and success itself. The first and most crucial principle in destroying your fear of failure is to completely reframe what failure means. In our society, we've been conditioned to view failure as a final verdict, a scarlet letter that brands us as inadequate. This couldn't be further from the truth. Failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of success. Every successful person you admire has failed more times than most people have even tried. Thomas Edison didn't fail 10,000 times before inventing the light bulb. He discovered 10,000 ways that didn't work. The difference between those who succeed and those who remain paralyzed by fear is simply their interpretation of setbacks. When you redefine failure as feedback, you transform it from a terminal diagnosis into valuable data. Each failure becomes a lesson that brings you closer to your goal. It tells you what doesn't work, what needs adjustment, and where your blind spots are. This is information you couldn't have obtained any other way. Start viewing every outcome as either success or learning. There is no third option. When you launch a project that doesn't meet expectations, ask yourself, what did this teach me? What can I do differently next time? What assumptions did I make that proved incorrect? These questions shift you from a victim mentality to a growth mindset. The practical application of this principle is simple but profound. After every setback, take 30 minutes to write down everything you learned from the experience. What went wrong? Why did it go wrong? What will you do differently? This practice transforms painful experiences into valuable assets. Over time, you'll actually begin to appreciate failures because of the clarity they provide. Here's a truth that will set you free. Failure is not a possibility, it's a certainty. If you're doing anything worthwhile, anything that pushes boundaries or challenges the status quo, you will fail, repeatedly. The question isn't whether you'll fail, but when and how often. Once you accept this inevitability, the fear begins to dissolve. You stop wasting energy trying to avoid the unavoidable and instead focus that energy on preparation and resilience. The most successful people don't have a lower failure rate, they have a higher attempt rate. They fail more because they try more. Think about it. Every skill you've mastered in life required failure. When you learned to walk, you fell countless times. When you learned to ride a bike, you crashed. When you learned to read, you stumbled over words. But you didn't see these as failures. You saw them as part of the learning process. The same principle applies to every new endeavor in your adult life. The fear of failure often stems from the belief that we should already be good at things we've never done before. This is absurd. Mastery requires repetition, and repetition inevitably involves mistakes. By embracing failure as an essential component of growth, you remove its power to paralyze you. Implement this principle by setting failure quotas. If you're launching a new business, commit to receiving a certain number of rejections. If you're learning a new skill, commit to making a specific number of mistakes. This counterintuitive approach removes the sting from failure by making it an expected, even celebrated part of your journey. One of the deepest roots of the fear of failure is the tendency to conflate our self-worth with our results. When we fail at something, we unconsciously conclude that we are failures. This is a catastrophic thinking error that must be corrected. You are not your outcomes. You are not your business results, your relationship status, your income, or your achievements. These are things you experience or create, but they are not who you are. Your inherent worth as a human being is not dependent on external validation or success metrics. When you separate your identity from your outcomes, failure becomes much less threatening. A failed project doesn't mean you're a failure. It means you executed a strategy that didn't work. A rejected proposal doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means that that particular opportunity wasn't the right fit. This distinction is crucial. Consider the concept of role separation. You are simultaneously many things: a professional, a parent, a friend, a learner, a creator. Failure in one role doesn't diminish you in the others. More importantly, even complete failure in all external roles doesn't diminish your intrinsic value as a human being. To implement this principle, practice self-compassion. When you experience a setback, talk to yourself the way you would talk to a dear friend going through the same situation. You wouldn't berate them or question their worth. You'd offer encouragement, perspective, and unconditional support. Extend the same grace to yourself. Create a daily practice of affirming your inherent worth independent of your achievements. This isn't about empty positive thinking. It's about grounding yourself in a more accurate and healthier self-concept that isn't constantly threatened by external circumstances. The fear of failure intensifies when we're obsessively focused on outcomes we can't fully control. You can't control whether your book becomes a bestseller, whether investors fund your startup, or whether you get the promotion. What you can control is the quality of your work, your consistency, and your commitment to improvement. This shift from outcome orientation to process orientation is liberating. When you focus on controlling what you can control, your effort, your learning, your daily practices, you remove much of the anxiety associated with failure. You succeed every day by showing up and doing the work, regardless of external results. Process goals are measurable and actionable. Instead of, I want to write a best-selling novel, outcome, you focus on, I will write 1,000 words every day, process. Instead of, I want to build $1 million business, outcome, you focus on, I will reach out to 5 potential customers daily, process. The outcome becomes a byproduct of consistently executing the process. This approach also makes failure less binary. With outcome-focused goals, you either succeed or fail. With process-focused goals, you succeed incrementally every single day you honor your commitments. Even if the ultimate outcome isn't what you hoped for, you've still built character, discipline, and skills through your process. Implement this principle by identifying the daily or weekly processes that, if executed consistently, would inevitably lead to your desired outcomes. Then ruthlessly focus on those processes. Measure yourself by whether you honored your process commitments, not by external results you can't control. This creates a sustainable motivation system that isn't dependent on unpredictable outcomes. The fear of failure often represents the gap between your current comfort zone and the action you're contemplating. The larger the gap, the more intense the fear. The solution isn't to make giant leaps that amplify your fear. It's to gradually expand your comfort zone through progressive exposure. This principle is based on the psychological concept of systematic desensitization. You can build courage and reduce fear by repeatedly exposing yourself to progressively challenging situations. Each small success builds confidence and slightly expands what feels comfortable, creating an upward spiral of capability and courage. If you're terrified of public speaking, you don't start by giving a TED Talk to thousands of people. You start by speaking up in a small meeting. Then you present to your team. Then you give a talk to a local group. Each step feels manageable because it's only slightly outside your current comfort zone, yet each step prepares you for the next level. The key is to make each step challenging enough to require courage, but achievable enough to be realistic. This creates a sustainable growth trajectory. Too much challenge leads to overwhelm and retreat. Too little challenge leads to stagnation. The sweet spot is where you feel nervous but capable. Create a fear ladder for your major goals. List the ultimate scary action at the top, then work backward to identify progressively smaller steps leading up to it. Start with the smallest step and work your way up, only progressing to the next level once the current level feels manageable. This systematic approach to courage building is remarkably effective. Principle 6. Build a failure-resilient mindset. Your mindset, the lens through which you interpret experiences, determines how failure affects you. A fixed mindset views abilities as static and failure as evidence of inadequacy. A growth mindset views abilities as developable and failure as an opportunity to improve. The difference is transformative. People with growth mindsets actively seek challenges because they know difficulty is where growth happens. They view effort as the path to mastery rather than as a sign they're not naturally talented. They learn from criticism rather than ignoring it, and crucially, they find inspiration in others' success rather than feeling threatened by it. Developing a growth mindset requires conscious attention to your self-talk and interpretations. When you face a setback, your automatic thoughts might be, "I'm not good at this, I'll never figure this out," or "maybe I'm in the wrong field." These are fixed mindset interpretations. Growth mindset alternatives would be, "I'm not good at this yet, I haven't figured this out yet," or "I need to develop new strategies." The word "yet" is powerful. It transforms a statement of limitation into a statement of potential. It acknowledges current reality while maintaining possibility for growth. This subtle shift in language reflects a profound shift in mindset. Another crucial aspect of failure-resilient mindset is developing what psychologists call stress-is-enhancing beliefs. Research shows that people who view stress and challenges as opportunities for growth experience better outcomes than those who view them as threats. Your beliefs about difficulty literally change your physiological and psychological responses to it. To build this mindset, regularly expose yourself to stories of successful people who failed repeatedly before succeeding. Recognize that the path to anything worthwhile is paved with setbacks. Study how top performers in any field view failure. They see it as information, as necessary as temporary. Adopt their perspective as your own. Principle 7. Create a support system that encourages risk. Your environment powerfully influences your relationship with failure. If you're surrounded by people who criticize every mistake, avoid risk, and play it safe, their fear will amplify your own. Conversely, if you're surrounded by people who take calculated risks, learn from failures, and support bold action, their courage will bolster yours. Deliberately cultivate relationships with people who encourage growth over comfort. These are people who will celebrate your attempts regardless of outcomes, who will help you extract lessons from failures, and who model the courage you're trying to develop. They provide both emotional support and practical perspective when you face setbacks. This doesn't mean surrounding yourself with cheerleaders who ignore problems or provide empty reassurance. The best support systems combine encouragement with honest feedback. They'll tell you when your strategy needs adjustment, but they won't question your worth or ability to ultimately succeed. They believe in your capacity to learn and grow. Consider finding or creating a mastermind group, a small collection of peers pursuing ambitious goals who meet regularly to share challenges, celebrate progress, and provide accountability. Knowing that others are taking risks and facing failures normalizes the experience and reduces the isolation that often accompanies setbacks. Also, be intentional about the content you consume. The books you read, podcasts you listen to, and media you engage with shape your beliefs about what's possible and acceptable. Consume content that features real stories of overcoming failure rather than content that presents sanitized versions of overnight success. Finally, become the supportive presence for others that you wish to have for yourself. When you encourage others to take risks and respond to their failures with empathy and perspective, you reinforce these values in yourself. Teaching is often the most powerful form of learning. Conclusion: the freedom on the other side of fear. Destroying your fear of failure isn't about becoming reckless or eliminating all anxiety about important endeavors. It's about removing the paralyzing power fear holds over your choices. It's about building the resilience and perspective to act despite fear, to learn from setbacks, and to persist toward what matters most to you. These 7 principles, redefining failure as feedback, embracing its inevitability, separating identity from outcomes, focusing on process, expanding your comfort zone gradually, building a resilient mindset, and creating a supportive environment, work together to fundamentally transform your relationship with failure. Implementation is key. Understanding these principles intellectually is valuable, but transformation comes from consistently applying them. Start with one principle that resonates most strongly with you. Practice it daily until it becomes second nature, then add another. Over time, these practices will compound into a completely different way of approaching challenges and setbacks. The irony is that the more you destroy your fear of failure, the less you actually fail in any meaningful sense. You attempt more, learn faster, and achieve more. What others call failures become stepping stones. What once seemed impossible becomes merely difficult, then challenging, then achievable. On the other side of your fear of failure lies the life you're meant to live, one characterized by growth, contribution, and the deep satisfaction that comes from pursuing what matters, regardless of the obstacles. The only real failure is allowing fear to stop you from trying. Everything else is just part of the journey.